Am I dreaming? No. I've been transmigrated into the body of a scumbag man who used his disciple as a doormat. And in 10 years, she'll become my downfall. I need to win her over before it's too late. But wait a second. The system wants me to be a villain. The story begins with a man imprisoned and surrounded by various monsters. The man, who seemed to be slightly injured, cried out for help as the beasts drew even closer to him. Suddenly, amidst the thunderstorm, a woman appeared. Seeing the figure flying through the sky, the man screamed desperately for help. The woman, who looked like an angel, activated her magic and, with a cynical smile on her face, struck a direct blow at the man. She leaned in close to his ear and said it had been a long time since she last saw him. Stepping on the man, she called him master and declared that his disciple was here. Then she simply said, "You're welcome." Right after that, she delivered another fatal blow to her master. At that moment, the man thought everything was over. However, he began to remember that he was originally the young master of the Su family in the realm of the immortal gods. He was a child of destiny, admired by thousands. He had conspired with the sacred maiden of the demonic abyss and betrayed the divine realm, becoming a hunted man. He fled to the lower realm, hid within the immortal Sword Cloud sect, and became a carefree elder. The man found all of this very strange, as those memories didn't seem to be his. Even so, he felt it didn't matter anymore, since he wasn't even sure if he would survive. Then, he suddenly woke up. He quickly sat up, realizing he was truly alive. Looking at his own hands, he tried to understand what had happened. That's when he realized he had transmigrated. Not only was he in a new body, but he also possessed the original owner's memories for the next 10 years. At that moment, a woman appeared, calling him Master. She asked if he'd had a nightmare and offered to wipe his sweat. Upon seeing the woman's face, the man recognized Feng Wanqing, the empress who, within 10 years, would become cruel and ruthless, destroying the entire world. Now, he realized she was his disciple. He quickly refused her help. Feng Wanqing asked if she had done something wrong. Based on the original body's memories, the man knew that Chang treated Feng Wanqing merely as a cultivation cauldron. When the time came, Chang would use the dual cultivation method to absorb all her power. Until then, Feng Wanqing had to remain pure. For that reason, Chang was extremely opposed to her having any contact with other men. On that very day, the original owner of the body had found Feng Wanqing learning skills from an elder brother of another sect. Consumed by rage, he had punished her harshly. Observing the poor girl's injuries, the man thought about how pitiful she truly was. Suddenly, a small fairy appeared before the protagonist. This was the system, which had been awakened because the host had felt empathy for the girl. However, as the host of the scumbag system, the protagonist was strictly forbidden from feeling pity for Feng Wanqing. A mission then appeared, stating that Feng Wanqing had made a mistake and that the host had to punish her within 3 minutes. The reward for completing the mission would be 100 system points and 10 advancement pills. The penalty, if he failed, would be the loss of 10 points, a drop of 2 cultivation levels, and physical castration. A warning message popped up, informing that the host's initial points were 100, and if the points reached 0, the system would automatically be unbound, and the host would die. The protagonist, confused, asked what kind of system this was, since it was forcing him to become some kind of cruel and overpowered villain. He also questioned what the hell physical castration even meant. He went on grumbling that the damn system had no conscience. At that moment, Feng Wanqing tried to say something to her master, but the protagonist was only thinking that, despite being the disciple of a distinguished elder, Feng Wanqing had a very low cultivation. She was only in the early stage of qi refinement. Moreover, she had no techniques, and her martial arts skills were useless. The protagonist concluded that the previous owner of that body hadn't taught her anything. The system reappeared, warning that the mission timer was running out. Annoyed, the protagonist complained that the system was too noisy and told it to shut up. Without realizing it, he struck Feng Wanqing with a blow, sending her flying to the other side of the room. Feng Wanqing fell to the ground, and the protagonist, coldly, said that since a mistake had been made, a punishment must be applied. He then threw a technique manual toward the fallen girl. He continued, saying that Feng Wanqing had secretly consulted an elder brother from another sect to learn the martial arts of the disciplinary hall in secret. Therefore, her punishment would be to copy that celestial-level technique, highly valued by her master for years, 10 times. Upon picking up the book, Feng Wanqing was startled to recall that the entire Jianyun immortal sect possessed only 2 celestial-level techniques, and now her master was actually letting her copy one of them. She wondered if this was really a punishment. The protagonist then stood up and said that, if she understood, she should leave now. The system message popped up, informing that the punishment mission had been successfully completed. In addition to the promised reward, the protagonist had also received a card that allowed him to emit a powerful aura for 1 hour, limited to once per day. Irritated, the protagonist turned away, thinking that by using a bug in the system, he had managed to outsmart it. A few minutes later, outside Su Cheng's quarters, Feng was about to leave. She thanked her master for the punishment and the reward. She also thought that the palm strike her master had given her had forced the stagnant blood in her body to circulate, and not only were her old wounds healed, but her meridians had been purified. She felt that soon she would be able to reach the 9th stage of qi refinement and advance to the foundation establishment stage. Feng Wanqing looked back, believing that her master would be acting differently toward her. But when she turned around completely, she realized he was no longer standing there. Even so, Feng Wanqing believed that, in truth, her master was secretly helping her. Clutching the technique book, Feng Wanqing felt touched and silently thanked her master for it. The protagonist, who was hiding behind the wall, received a message from the system, informing him that he had gained 10 affinity points with Feng Wanqing. Along with that, he also gained 10 system points. At that moment, he realized that by increasing someone's favorability, he also earned system points. He then decided to check his favorability level with Feng Wanqing and saw that it was in the negatives. The protagonist called Su Cheng a tremendous bastard. The system appeared and announced that the main story mission had been activated. One of the missions was to help Feng Wanqing fall into darkness. The protagonist questioned whether this wasn't the same path the previous owner of that body had followed. Seeing that the system only pretended not to understand, the protagonist became irritated and said that if Feng Wanqing fell into darkness, he would be dragged down with her as well. "Damn dog system," he muttered. Suddenly the protagonist felt the barrier of the mountain basement wavering. He quickly got ready, believing someone had invaded the place. A figure appeared, passing through. It was a woman asking for help from the Cloud Sword sect. The protagonist appeared before her, asking what she was doing there and why she had invaded the sect. That woman was Zueliuli, chief disciple of the Snow family from the northern forest. Zueliuli threw herself onto the protagonist and, with a sweet gaze, asked him to save her. The protagonist thinks, at that moment, that judging by Zueliuli's appearance, it seems she has been affected by some kind of enchanted poison. Now, he must seal her meridians to prevent the poison from spreading. So, he places his fingers on the young woman's shoulder. With that movement, she loses consciousness, and upon observing her, the protagonist believes she has been seriously hurt. He decides to take her back first, as she needs to wake up before anything else can be done. At that moment, someone was watching Su Cheng from afar. It was one of the elders of the Sword Cloud Immortal sect, Bai Yuchen, who referred to the protagonist as a reckless and flirtatious scoundrel. Some time passed, and Su Cheng was taking care of the girl's recovery. He calls upon the system and asks for information about Zueliuli. The description that appears informs him that she will become the future secret lover of the male lead, Ye Feng, in this world, and that he will sacrifice himself to save her in the ancient secret realm opened by the eternal immortal dynasty. The protagonist becomes curious about who this so-called male lead Ye Feng is, and begins to wonder if he might have stumbled upon Ye Feng's secret harem. At that moment, Xue Liuli's body reacts. She realizes that the poison in her body has completely disappeared. Excited, Xue Liuli thanks the protagonist for saving her, saying that she will surely repay him in the future. The protagonist stands up and says she doesn't need to be so formal. Xue Liuli then thinks that an elder of the sect, handsome, young and strong, wouldn't be a bad choice for dual cultivation and detoxifying her body. She quickly gets excited by the idea and tries to control herself, while the protagonist observes her, unaware of her intentions. Suddenly, a message from the system appears, informing him that the host has gained 30 favorability points with Xue Liuli. He wonders if it's really that easy. Xiao Liuli says she fears that her presence there might cause trouble for his sect, and once again thanks him for his kindness, promising to repay it in the future. The protagonist feels a bit awkward with the situation and replies that it's all right. Then he wonders why the atmosphere suddenly became so strange and awkward. Suddenly, a loud rumble is heard, and a sinister voice emerges, asking how the insignificant scum of the Sword Cloud Immortal sect dares to hide someone who belongs to him. Xue Liuli panics and says that he is there. The protagonist's disciples begin to shout, saying that this is the aura of the ghost sect, and they wonder how those guys managed to infiltrate the Sword Cloud sect. They go on to say that this is the ancestor, known for being fierce and cruel, with a notorious reputation across the 5 major regions. Xue Liuli was hiding behind Su Chang. A disciple steps forward and declares that this ghost sect ancestor has annihilated countless sects. That horrifying creature keeps speaking, saying that if they don't hand over the person who belongs to him today, then they shouldn't blame him for destroying the entire sect. This demonic ancestor had a rather flamboyant appearance and was already at the mid-stage of the soul formation realm. A new mission is unlocked. The protagonist must help Xue Liuli defeat the ghost ancestor. By doing so, he will earn reward points, and the more stylish his actions, the more points he will receive. At that moment, 3 lights appear in the sky, and voices shout for the ghost ancestor not to be so arrogant. The people who appeared were Bai Yunchen and Zhao Yunchen. They state that they have never interfered with the ghost sect, and therefore, the ghost elder has no right to interfere with the Sword Cloud sect. Zhou Yuan, the Grand Elder, was also with them, and asks when exactly someone from their sect hid someone from the ghost sect. The ghost ancestor then points at Xue Liuli and says that he likes her, therefore she now belongs to him. He demands that they hand her over immediately, or he will exterminate the entire Sword Cloud sect. Bai shouts, calling the old rag a trespasser, and orders him to leave at once and not to flaunt his power there. Zhao, worried, asks Bai not to provoke him, as they may not be able to defeat him. He suggests simply handing over the person and ending it quickly. Bai, irritated, tells Zhao to shut up and calls him a coward. Zhao just asks her not to be angry. The ghost ancestor then says he likes Bai as well, calling both her and Xue Liuli to become his dual cultivation partners. If they satisfy him, he might spare the sect. Upon hearing that, Bai becomes completely enraged and calls the ancestor an old bastard. She declares that the Bai family has a supreme expert, and if anything happens to her, the family will hunt the ghost ancestor down to the depths of hell. Zhao tries to plead with Bai not to be so impulsive. Shuo, witnessing all the commotion, tells Su Chang that the ghost ancestor is extremely powerful and that no one in the sect is a match for him. Feeling guilty, she declares that she will go with him. The protagonist thinks to himself that, at that moment, his cultivation is being suppressed and he cannot fight at full strength. He remembers that there is a bloodline seal within him, placed by a supreme expert of the Su family from the divine realm. This seal hides his aura, allowing him to avoid detection and pursuit by beings from the immortal divine realm. The cost of this is that his cultivation level has been suppressed by 2 realms. But Chang remembers that he has something. He steps in front of Shui Liuli and says that if he saved her only to let her die again, how would the world view the immortal Sword Cloud sect? The protagonist continues, stating that his sect is under the protection of powerful cultivators, and that a mere expert of the soul formation realm is nothing to fear. The ghost ancestor declares that everyone in the immortal Sword Cloud sect is a bunch of reckless and blind fools, as a mere nascent soul dares to play the hero and try to save a beauty. With an even more terrifying aura, the ghost ancestor states that he specializes in dealing with arrogant fools. He charges toward the protagonist, who quickly pulls out his aura card, obtained earlier from the system. Chang activates the card swiftly, and a powerful aura bursts forth around him. The protagonist asks if the ghost ancestor truly thinks he can face him. At that moment, a massive bolt of lightning crosses the sky, and a divine figure appears above the ghost ancestor, who is stunned by the strength of the aura. The 3 elders are utterly terrified upon realizing that the entity is above the soul formation realm. The divine and powerful figure grabs the ghost ancestor, looks him directly in the eyes, and says that he wants to see something that day. He shouts, asking who dares to touch the immortal Sword Cloud sect. The ghost ancestor declares that the protagonist's sect has no martial ethics, as it truly is protected by a supreme expert. The protagonist watches the scene with confidence, while Shui Liuli looks at him, slightly frightened. Bai is surprised to see that a supreme expert is protecting the sect. Zhao is also astonished by this new information. Zhou Yuan wonders if this protection had been deliberately arranged by the sect master while he is away. At that moment, the ghost ancestor begins pulling in all the air around him and then uses all his strength to break free. He thinks that just managing to free himself has already cost him most of his spiritual energy, and concludes that he is no match for dealing with that creature. Faced with this, he kneels before the divine entity and says that he was very disrespectful. He admits he did not know that the Sword Cloud Immortal sect had such a powerful expert protecting it. He goes on to say that he was reckless, for with that lord present, he would never dare attack the sect. The old man then looks toward Shui and declares that his only objective is to retrieve an item of his. He then quickly turns and claims that the person is not a disciple of the Sword Cloud Immortal sect, hoping that the Lord will allow his departure. However, the protagonist steps in front of Shui and warns the ghost ancestor not to act so recklessly. Zhao, pouting, comments that Chang sure knows how to show off at the right time. With the supreme expert present, the ghost ancestor would never dare to be reckless. He just needed to show up and do his little performance. The ghost ancestor, irritated, prepares an attack and shouts that a mere half-baked cultivator dares to try to stop him. Just as he is about to strike the protagonist, a shield appears in front of him. Chang smiles and says he was merely giving the old man a chance, concluding that the old man is truly useless. The saint who protects the protagonist's sect activates his power and launches a powerful flame attack toward the strange old man, hitting him directly and completely incinerating him. The saint approaches the protagonist and declares that his highness is suppressing his cultivation level and that he is at his disposal. The protagonist simply thanks him and tells the saint that he may take his leave. Zhao, upon witnessing the scene, is shocked to see that the supreme expert actually bowed to the protagonist. Nervous, he smiles and comments that Chang is truly impressive and not an ordinary person. Bai remarks that, in fact, he still prefers the rebellious version of Chang from the past. The old ghost ancestor, collapsed on the ground, declares that he was blind and failed to recognize Chang's greatness, and because of that, he offended him. He then begs for his life, promising that from now on, the ghost sect will be entirely at his feet, obeying his every command. The protagonist, however, orders the old man to leave. The ghost ancestor quickly gets up, frightened, and thanks the protagonist. However, as he is running away, The protagonist prepares an attack, and with a precise lightning strike, Chang eliminates the ghost ancestor in one blow. He says that the members of the ghost sect have committed many crimes and show no respect for human life, and concludes by saying that those bastards dared to think they could serve him. Zhao gets excited and praises the protagonist, beginning to flatter him. Bai doesn't hold back and reminds Zhao that he had called the protagonist a show-off. Bai continues recounting everything Zhao used to say behind the protagonist's back, and the two begin to argue. Meanwhile, Feng Wanqing observes everything from afar, relieved and very proud that her master has reached such a realm. She then wonders if she will ever be able to catch up to her master. At that moment, the system appears, congratulating the protagonist for completing the mission. Since Shu's favorability increased by 30 points, her current favorability is now 75. She is emotionally involved with the host, which directly affects her relationship with the male protagonist, Feng. Upon reading this, the protagonist remembers that, in a few days, a competition between sects will be held, and Feng, along with other important characters, will be present. Realizing that his disciple Feng Wanqing is still at a very low level, he sees that he needs to think of something to change that. The next day, the protagonist and Feng Wanqing were walking around. She asked what the master wanted to talk to her about. Chang explained that he had a friend from the demon clan who, to avoid any trouble, was hiding in that place. The protagonist went on to say that he brought Feng Wanqing there so that his friend could help her advance in her cultivation. Looking around, he wondered where she was. At that moment, a movement stirred in the water, and a girl scooped some water with her mouth and splashed it toward the protagonist. Chang then asked if that was supposed to be funny. She was a snake girl who smiled excitedly upon seeing her old friend again. She said that if Chang stayed with her, he would become the Dragon King. The protagonist replied that he didn't care about becoming a Dragon King since it was obvious she was a snake. The girl called him silly and claimed she was a great dragon. Chang then got straight to the point. Pointing to Feng, he said he was there for another reason. He explained that the Grand Sect competition was approaching, but his disciple's cultivation level was still too low, and the martial arts techniques and skills she had just learned were not professional. The protagonist asked Sister Yaolan if she happened to have a divine body refining technique from the Demon Dragon clan, and said he hoped Yaolan could teach it to Feng. Yaolan observed the two silently for a moment and commented that she hadn't expected Chang to like that type of girl. Then, she emerged from the water, completely changing her appearance, and said that once she reached the Supreme Realm, she would be able to transform into a human form, and at that point, she wouldn't lose to the sister standing before her. Yaolan threw herself onto the protagonist and asked if she could do whatever she wanted. Chang asked her not to joke around and said they would talk about it later. A system message appeared with a side mission. Reach 80 points with Yaolan, and also help her reach the Supreme Realm, in order to extract her dragon bone. Seeing this, the protagonist remarked that this damn system never did anything for people's good. He remembered that in his previous life, the only person Yaolan trusted was Chang, but that scoundrel's goal was only to get her dragon bone. He ambushed her while she was leveling up, forcing her to give it up. The protagonist then ran off, saying he would leave his little disciple with Sister Yaolan, and asked Feng to listen to everything she had to say. Feng was startled by the protagonist's sudden departure. Yaolan grabbed Feng's arm and told her to stop. Feng asked what Yaolan was planning to do. Yaolan replied that since Feng's master had left her in her care, she should obey everything Yaolan said. Otherwise, as a weakling, she'd be left behind by her master. Then, Yaolan told Feng to take off her clothes, saying it would be better that way to absorb the essence of demon dragon blood and refine her body. Yaolan assured her she wasn't a man, and that Feng didn't need to worry about her purity. Even though she was embarrassed, Feng thought about her master and began to obey Yaolan just for his sake. She believed she would become strong because of him. And so, the two began to practice their secret cultivation techniques. A few days later, On the day of the grand competition of the immortal Sword Cloud sect, some cultivating disciples were preparing for the duels. Zhao, seeing the crowd, remarked that many people had indeed come to watch the sect's internal competition. He went on to say that it was an unprecedented spectacle, unlike anything seen before. Zhou Yuan commented that, with the emergence of the supreme expert, forces from all sides had mobilized upon hearing the news. Now, everyone was there because of Elder Su, and the rest just wanted to bask in the glory. At that moment, the three great families of the northern wild region were also present. Xue was calling for her father, asking him to follow her. The heads of the families had come in person this time, leaving everyone impressed. Xueliuli's father said that his daughter was lucky to have made a connection with the supreme elder of the Sword Cloud sect. Moreover, it was said that this elder possessed a high level of cultivation. Then, he asked when Xueliuli would introduce Su Chang to him. Embarrassed, Xue asked her father not to speak so recklessly. Suddenly, a commotion began. The Demon Slayer Alliance had arrived as well. The vice leader of the alliance, Wei Kun, was present in person. However, among all those people, a mysterious man watched everything in silence. He commented that it had been a long time since he last saw Xueliuli. Sometime later, the annual competition of the Immortal Sword Cloud sect began. The disciples faced off in the central arena. Feng Wanqing was also there, fighting bravely and winning her first match. And so they reached the final battle, between Feng Wanqing and Li Yue. The protagonist, watching the fight's preparation, thought that after being refined by Yao Lan, Feng Wanqing's potential had been stimulated to a certain degree. Therefore it was no surprise that she had reached the finals. After all, she was destined to become the Empress in the future. Li Yue smiled and commented that he and Feng were meeting again. Then he asked whether what he had taught her back then had been helpful. He continued, saying that if it hadn't been for his guidance, she would have been eliminated in the first round. Feng, uncomfortable, remained silent while listening to all of that. Then she remembered that Li Yue had only taken advantage of the situation back then to exploit her. The man approached Feng and said that she should just give up, as she was no match for him in terms of strength. He asked why they didn't meet in a more secluded place that night, claiming he would teach her some deeper techniques. He added that he guaranteed she would feel ecstatic. At that moment, Feng stared at him, drew her sword, and charged at the man, landing a strike on his face. Li Yue brought his hand to his face, incredulous at Feng's attitude. He countered, saying she had the audacity to attack his handsome face. Feng shouted, telling him to stop with that nonsense. Wei Kun, who was watching the fight, sensed a familiar demonic scent coming from Feng Wanqing. Even if it was faint, he wouldn't be fooled. The protagonist then thought that Feng Wanqing's scent had reached that idiot's nose and wondered if this would mark the beginning of her descent into darkness. Zhou Yuan commented that Feng had been a very discreet disciple before, but in just a few days had shown incredible progress. He concluded by saying it seemed that Elder Su had put a lot of effort into her. Bai simply shrugged at this. Feng continued her frantic fight against her senior brother. Li Yue wondered how that girl had improved her cultivation level so much in such a short time. He didn't want to lose to her, because if that happened, he wouldn't be able to show his face again. So, he prepared an item in his hand and attacked Feng directly. Feng used her sword to defend herself but noticed that Li Yue was hiding something in his other hand. She wondered if it was a weapon. The man prepared for another sudden attack, but Feng managed to strike the small blade, shattering it into several pieces. Taking advantage of a gap in Feng's defense, Li Yue lunged forward with his sword, shouting that she was finished. However, Feng managed to dodge at the last second and landed a direct kick to the lower parts of that cursed man. Then, she quickly jumped back while Li Yue collapsed to the ground like a sack of potatoes. People around them commented on the scene, saying such an action could harm the future of their fellow disciple. The discussion started turning against Feng for having made such a questionable move. However, despite the controversy, Feng Wanqing was declared the champion of that year's competition. Feng only thought that she had finally not disappointed her master. The protagonist, looking at her, said, "Not bad at all." But at that moment, a storm began to form in the sky, leaving the protagonist very confused. A giant dragon started to emerge from within the storm. A voice echoed, laughing intensely, saying that the immortal Sword Cloud sect had disciples who used underhanded tactics and dirty moves, and that it was all very entertaining. The voice continued, commenting on the large number of people gathered, and then asked if they were all there to welcome him. Zhao, terrified, said that the demonic aura might belong to the crown prince of the demon clan, Mo Daotian. Zhou Yuan asked why such a person would be coming there. Xue Liuli's father said that this man held the third position on the Heaven and Earth demon list, a truly ruthless being against whom there was no chance of victory. Another sect leader questioned what was going on. That mysterious individual from before appeared again, surrounded by a dark aura. In that moment, he thought that the one he had been waiting for had finally arrived. The immense dragon was still forming in the sky, and a humanoid figure appeared on its head. This man declared that the grand sect competition was happening that day, and that he was sure there would be great prizes. As crown prince, he was quite interested, and then asked what he should do next. Zhao, somewhat confident, tells everyone not to fear, for the sect has a protective barrier, and the enemy will not be able to breach it. However, the young demon lord Mo Daotian simply passes through the barrier with ease, leaving Zhao completely shocked. Mo Daotian smiles and comments that the barrier is very weak. It's a joke. Like a black lightning bolt, Mo Daotian descends from the sky in front of Feng Wanqing, who watches in fright, trying to comprehend what has just happened. Then the demon begins a 10-second countdown and orders the irrelevant people to get out of there quickly. A system message appears for the protagonist. It is the notification of a new mission, asking him to prevent the young demon's entry into the sect and defeat him in front of everyone. Upon reading this, Su Chang complains that that damn system is causing trouble again. Mo Daotian, in a measured tone, states that time is running out. People begin to run in panic, trying to escape as fast as possible. Zhou Yuan turns to the protagonist and asks him to activate the sect's grand formation, because even with few people, and many elders, they could still fight that opponent. Su Chang simply replies that they cannot. Irritated, Zhao asks what he means by that. Zhou Yuan tries to control the situation and ends up agreeing with Su Chang. Meanwhile, Mo Daotian turns to Feng Wanqing. He notices something different about that girl. She has the aura of a unique bloodline, uncommon. If well nurtured, she could bring great surprises in the future. Mo Daotian approaches Feng Wanqing and remarks that her methods are very much in line with his demon clan style, and that it would be a waste to leave her there. Then he asks Feng if she wouldn't like to go with him to the demon clan, for she could become the next celestial demoness. Feng is frightened by the sudden proposal but responds that the demon prince is very ugly and that she refuses. Mo Daotian, annoyed, declares that he is the crown prince and clearly the most handsome in the demon realm. He questions whether Feng's brain is functioning or if she is blind, and adds that she will regret this one day. However, he finishes by saying that it doesn't matter, because once he destroys the entire sect, she will certainly go with him. After all, the crown prince gave her a chance. Mo Daotian then asks if Feng would like to serve him for 3 years as his personal maid and wants to know what she thinks about that. Nervously, Zhao comments that serving 3 years as a servant isn't such a bad offer, because besides escaping destruction at that moment, they could infiltrate and learn more about the enemy's territory, gaining knowledge for future battles and ensuring they would never be defeated again. Bai, once again, calls Zhao a coward and says that since he wants so much to be a servant, she will do it herself for him. But at that moment, the protagonist appears, asking for permission and noting that his disciple doesn't seem very interested in Mo Daotian's demonic clan. He concludes by saying that it would be better for the prince to leave. Feng Wanqing grows very excited to see her master arrive at that instant. Mo Daotian then prepares an attack, belittling the protagonist by calling him a mere sect elder who dares to provoke a crown prince. He unleashes a dragon strength strike aimed at Su Chang. However, the protagonist, smiling, raises his fingers, casts a spell, and declares that he wants to see if the crown prince can withstand it. At that moment, the swords of the disciples and everyone nearby begin to be seized by an invisible force, and they position themselves before the protagonist. Su Chang sends them flying toward Mo Daotian, who starts laughing, saying it was a clever trick. He manages to defend against the attacks and, sneering, remarks that the protagonist needs more training to challenge him. for at Su Chang's current level, it was a great joke. Yet Su Chang suddenly appears behind the demonic prince and says that viewing everything only from the kingdom's perspective will blind him. Startled, Mo Daotian wonders how Su Chang got there. Once again, the protagonist readies an attack, thinking that although his cultivation is suppressed, the technique he uses is of divine grade, capable of refining ordinary spiritual energy within the body into something much more potent. He launches the strike at Mo Daotian, who, upon impact, is thrown to the ground. The crown prince tries to stand but is struck again by Su Chang, who prevents him from rising. The protagonist then tells Mo Daotian not to move, for he might hurt himself. He also asks the prince to take a deep breath, commenting that feeling dizzy is normal at that point. At that instant, the system message appears, informing that the host has successfully completed the mission. Meanwhile, the young demonic master begins to complain, saying the protagonist deceived him and that Su Chang does not follow martial virtues. The disciples and onlookers are utterly shocked to see the protagonist handling the demonic crown prince with such ease. Once more, that mysterious man appears, saying that the Sword Cloud sect truly has someone so powerful. The crown prince thrashes on the ground like a spoiled child, begging the protagonist to let him go and settle matters fairly. Su Chang simply frees him and accepts the agreement. Mo Daotian quickly stands up, complaining that all his clothes are torn and declaring he will not fight anymore that day. He concludes by saying that if the Sword Cloud sect offers 2 celestial-level techniques as compensation, he will pretend that nothing happened. Su Chang laughs and asks if this is some attempt to relieve the shame Mo Daotian just suffered. The prince responds that his battle attire is a rare fashion piece, handcrafted by a famous regional artisan, so offering 2 celestial techniques would be a very generous offer. Suddenly, the mysterious man appears behind Mo Daotian and throws 2 chains toward the prince. Su Chang is left speechless at the sight, while Yuan, Zhao, and Bai are equally stunned. Mo Daotian tries to turn and asks who the bastard was, who attacked him sneakily. Seeing the figure before him, Su Chang thinks he's finally arrived. The male protagonist established in that world. The formidable rival of the protagonist. The blue dragon heaven's chosen of the sacred land, Feng. Mo Daotian says that one thing is not being able to defeat Su Chang, but that bastard actually thinks anyone can come and attack him. Feng merely remarks that the prince is making too much noise. He then yanks hard on the chains, dragging Mo Daotian with him, and delivers a kick to the demonic prince, who falls to the ground awkwardly. At that moment, Feng begins to remove the cloak that covered his face, revealing his presence to everyone there. Yuan is startled to see Feng, as is Xue Liuli's father, who recognizes him as the candidate for Holy Son of the Azure Dragon Sacred Land. He then asks how Feng could be in that place. Bai and Zhao bow to Holy Son Feng, and the heads of the great families also bow, greeting the male protagonist of that world. Feng thanks everyone for their cordiality. Zhao steps forward and says that if they had known the Holy Son was present, they wouldn't be in such a lamentable state. Then Zhao asks what brought the Holy Son there. Feng replies that this is a task from the annual evaluation of the Holy Son of the Sacred Land, and that Mo Daotian is the target. He explains that he is there to capture him. Suddenly, a great dragon appears over Feng, but with just 2 fingers, he launches a powerful attack at the creature, which quickly turns into a fried snake. Feng approaches the demonic crown prince, who is still lying on the ground, very frightened. He draws his sword and comments that maybe taking off just the head would be faster. The crown prince, desperate, begs Feng to wait a moment, claiming that his head is very heavy and that, if it's with Feng, it will be quicker. At that moment, something is hurled toward Feng, causing him to drop his sword. Feng turns and asks what Su Chang is thinking. He reflects that anyone who can disarm him with a stone must indeed be very powerful. Our protagonist, ironically, simply apologizes and adds that he cannot let Mo Daotian die on Sword Cloud sect territory, because otherwise, if the demon clan comes for vengeance in the future, the sect will have many problems. A mission prompt appears for Su Chang, asking him to save Mo Daotian and thwart Holy Son Feng's task. After reflecting for a moment, Feng agrees with Su Chang and admits he hadn't considered that point before. Mo Daotian, analyzing the whole situation, believes that if he stays there, Ye Feng won't be able to do anything against him. So, with eyes shining, he says he understands everything now. He turns to Ye Feng and declares that, if he hadn't already been somewhat wounded, he would certainly have taken care of this so-called holy son of the Blue Dragon. Ye Feng turns to Mo Daotian, clearly displeased by what he's just heard. Mo Daotian, using all his talent for acting and drama, begins to warn that if Ye Feng so much as lays a hand on him again, he will die on the spot. Along with his beloved dragon, Little Black, he adds that as soon as the demon clan finds out, no one present will survive. Ye Feng then states that he will spare Mo Daotian for the time being, but will act as soon as he leaves the Cloud Sword sect. Next, Ye Feng turns toward where Feng was standing and says there is one more thing that needs explaining. Pointing his sword at Feng Wanqing, he asks why she is exuding the aura of the demon clan. Yuan and Zhao are startled by the accusation and ask if it might be a misunderstanding. Wei Kun appears again and says that the Holy Sun is right, for that girl can deceive everyone except the Demon Hunters Alliance. He continues, asserting that Feng Wanqing possesses the demon clan's aura and must be eliminated today. Those around begin to comment, saying they never would have imagined that the Demon Hunters sect would confront the Cloud Sword sect. But since they are ruthless, they believe that Disciple must indeed be in trouble. Soon, the remarks turn into harsh judgments of the poor girl, labeling her a demon and hurling other pejoratives. Wei Kun draws his sword and declares that, as vice leader of the Demon Hunters Alliance, he will deliver justice on behalf of heaven. At that moment, Su Chang activates the system and asks if taking action now will interrupt Feng Wanqing's fall into darkness. The system responds that helping the female protagonist Feng Wanqing embrace evil is one of the main missions. Therefore, it advises the host to step back and mind his own life. However, the protagonist declares that he is actually helping Feng gain confidence, so that in the future he can destroy her and drag her even deeper into darkness. The system then rejoices, saying the host is truly clever and evil, and concludes that this idea is brilliant. The protagonist, at that moment, thinks to himself that the system is very stupid and brainless. Just then, someone steps in front of Wei Kun's blade. It is Mo Daotian, who asks if anyone present wants to risk death for what was done to the Master Su's disciple. Mo Daotian turns to the protagonist, expecting some sign of approval for his actions, but the protagonist merely watches in silence. Wei Kun remarks that Elder Su has not spoken up, then asks Mo Daotian not to cause any more trouble. At that moment, Su Chang appears behind Wei Kun. Feng Wanqing is moved to see her beloved master there. The protagonist lays his hand on Wei Kun's head and asks since when anyone can lecture his disciple. We'll continue in the next episode. For more videos like this, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. See you next time.